Well, a very good afternoon to you on this 13th day of the extension to our lockdown in South Africa. My name is Mark Long, rector of the parish of St Andrew in Newlands, Cape Town. Today's Eucharist readings include a passage from Acts. In fact, Eucharist readings have included passages from Acts right through from Easter. Today we're in chapter 8, a passage following on from the stoning of the first martyr, Stephen. A stoning overseen by Saul, whom we more commonly today know as Paul, who in today's passage extends that persecution to the early believers in Jerusalem. Many are ripped from their homes and taken off to jail. A tough time for those early believers in Jesus as Messiah. Saul committed to ensuring that orthodoxy holds and that this new kind of sectarian movement is blotted out. But all it serves to do, of course, is to drive people from Jerusalem, many of the early believers. And we have the story of Philip in Samaria, in one of the towns there, preaching, sharing what God is doing in their time, and of course sharing Jesus as Messiah, as the Christ. And the Samaritans in the city welcoming that news. Their form of faith had diverged from the Orthodox Jewish form many years before, when the Northern Kingdom had been destroyed. But there were semblances of belief, and so it wouldn't have been too hard for Philip to draw the links and for people to make the connections and to respond. But what caught my attention today is that this early persecution forces those early believers in the very new state that they find themselves to doing things differently. It's not just business as usual. And we find them moving beyond the traditional boundaries of the faith that they've grown up in. A willingness to go to Samaria, to those that they've always looked down on, and to share this wonderful news. And we see, as we will continue to read through the book of Acts, the gospel message being shared in a multitude of new spaces that from the older Jewish, more orthodox perspective would just never have been possible. The persecution forces the church into doing things in a different way, or those new believers into doing things in a different way. This COVID-19 pandemic, very different to a persecution, but nonetheless something that is forcing us as church to recognize we need to do things in a different way. As we look at the various levels of lockdown going forward, as far as I can work out, level 4 just means we can smoke. Not much else will change, particularly for the context of church and ministry. And so we're needing to explore different ways of interacting with people, of sharing our faith, of nurturing one another, of being the people of God in our time. And so the virtual world has become very important. Videos like this, services via Zoom, and telephone calls and WhatsApps, and using social media, Facebook and other forms of reaching out. And of course, in doing so, having to rethink what's relevant, what's still valid, and how we can use what has been wonderful treasures for us in the past in terms of doing ministry, reaching out to one another, sharing our faith, and adapting those to the new situation. And of course then exploring beyond that what we need to do that we've perhaps never thought of before. And a wonderful renewal of the church, I suspect, in the 21st century, as for certainly for people like Anglicans like us, learning to do things in ways that we just had never imagined we would ever have to, but really embracing modern technology and the ability to reach beyond our own boundaries as we do that. And so while we all continue to struggle with lockdown and all that means on so many different ways, let us be thankful that God continues through His Spirit to lead and to guide us, that God is present in doing that. And let us respond. Let us respond with courage, and let us do so with hope.